trying to advance his reputation. Could this be true? Could Washington have been so different from others of his time? At the time of his death in 1799, Washington had been a public official for much of the preceding 50 years. Had he been above politics throughout his public life? Was he ever above politics? What, if anything, did Washington do to elevate his standing in the eyes of his countrymen? During the last 20 years of his public life, from the Valley Forge winter in 1778 onward, Washington was regarded as an Olympian figure and was revered by many. Washington's contemporaries often spoke of him as godlike, a view fostered by such 19th-century hagiographers as Parson Weems and John Marshall. No other founder was thought of in that manner, nor were any of Washington's successors. Even today, Washington stands apart from most of America's cherished heroes. His image adorns our currency and military medals. Upward of 1 million people annually visit his home, Mount Vernon, a larger number than trek to the residence of any other American leader. At Mount Vernon's gift shop and elsewhere, shoppers can find china embellished with the image of a mythical Washington praying in the snow at Valley Forge, and children's books abound that depict him as flawless. Television channel surfers occasionally come across adulatory made-for-television movies that portray Washington as heroic and his contemporary critics as menaces to civilization. Washington may not be regarded as godlike today, but his popular image remains that of a demigod. Serious scholars have long since moved past hagiography, and for more than a century they've sought to discover the unvarnished Washington. Biographers have rummaged through the broad features of his life, while other historians have dug into his nooks and crannies, exploring Washington as a soldier, slave owner, parent and husband, entrepreneur and president. Nothing has attracted more attention than Washington's character. On the other hand, nothing about Washington has attracted less attention than his political activities. Though Washington served in the Virginia Assembly for nearly 20 years before the War of Independence, his legislative career has been passed over with insufficient scrutiny. Save for the so-called Conway Cabal in 1778 and the Newburgh Affair in 1783, General Washington's wartime political activities have gone largely unnoticed. As for his presidency, Washington, even in the hands of the best historians, has by and large continued to be seen as above politics, much as he was thought to have been at the time of his death. James Thomas Flexner, perhaps Washington's foremost biographer, portrayed the first president as devoid of any partisan agenda. Washington, Flexner wrote in the 1970s, consciously sought a midway point between partisan extremes, as he saw himself as the keystone of an arch, holding all upright and in equilibrium. Douglas Southall Freeman, in an encyclopedic 7-volume biography that appeared in the 1940s and 1950s, had already taken a similar stance. Freeman portrayed President Washington as the great mediator, striving to stay above politics by reducing personal animosities between the right-wing Alexander Hamilton and the left-wing Thomas Jefferson in order to prevent damage to the new government. Freeman's and Flexner's themes of Washington's disinterestedness were echoed by their contemporary John Miller. In an influential political history of the 1790s, Miller, a distinguished historian, wrote that Washington, believing that Jefferson and Hamilton had the same end in view, tried to mark out a line by which both could walk in peace and understanding without endangering the existence of the federal government. Stanley Elkins and Eric McKittrick, who a couple of generations later co-authored their own notable history of the politics of the Federalist-dominated 1790s, had another take. Washington, they concluded, was pre-modern in his thinking. Abhorring partisanship as destructive, he instead worked out for himself a role of standing resolutely above all party and faction.